Welcome to the closing panel covering the Next G Alliance, the year ahead. This is Mike Naraki, Vice President Technology with Addis, and I'm pleased to be joined by leaders from the Next G Alliance Steering Group and Policy Committee. So let me first introduce our three co-chairs of our steering committee, which is essentially the crossroads of the Next G Alliance Technical Work Program. So I'm joined by Devaki Chandramouli from Nokia Bell Labs, Benoit Pelletier from VMware, and Brian Daly from AT&T Labs. Welcome. In addition, we're pleased to have our chair of our Next G Alliance Policy Committee, Michaela Jahat from Microsoft. It's good to see you all. So if you feel free to expand on your role or your title during your opening question. So if I could just kind of put this panel in perspective now in terms of today's program. So today, thus far, we've had keynotes from Addis and Next G Alliance senior leaders. We've had remarks from key government speakers covering future policy and technology goals of this region. We've also had deep dive presentations covering the roadmap to 6G, and we've had academic thought leaders that talked about the collaborative research landscape. So it seems like this is the appropriate for the closing panel to talk about the year ahead. Actually, it's the year and beyond. And so we'd like to discuss essentially the future direction of Next G Alliance as we go beyond our initial set of foundational deliverables. Okay, so let's get going. So let me start with the opening round of questions where the panelists can feel free to wear both your Next G Alliance hats as well as share your perspective from your companies, given that each of your companies are heavily invested in the success of the Alliance. And I'd like to begin with Devaki. Devaki, Nokia Bell Labs has a rich history of fundamental and applied research, as do many of the companies in the Alliance. Could you explain the basic ecosystem of industrial research and why it will be important for Next G Alliance to engage the research community as the Alliance evolves its effort?
Thank you, Mike, for the kind introduction. I'm honored to be in this panel, and thank you for the question. Indeed, Bell Labs is known for foundational and applied research. Bell Labs scientists have won 9 Nobel Prizes. Now, taking a step back, in order to do research for future standards, research needs to be done on focused technology areas, and it entails 5 main steps. First step, we need to initiate research by scouting technology trends, participate and contribute to academic conferences, collaborate with universities, also participate in guest lectures. Second step, we need partnership among companies and academia for research projects, work on prototype to test feasibility of the concepts. The third step, companies will have to then work on focused internal research on select technology areas, considering industry and market trend. Fourth step, detailed system level research should be undertaken on select topics targeting standards work, considering business cases for market expansion and excellence. The fifth and the final step is about actual standardization in the respective SDO, alliance, or fora. During this phase of the 6G era, we need close and active engagement between Next G Alliance and academia. This will ensure that we are innovative, yet grounded close to reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Devaki, for that background. So let me shift the direction just a bit. Benoit, I'll note the Next G Alliance has grown from its initial 15 founding members to over 80 current members across this whole ecosystem of the 6G vision. So as we think about how networks and applications will evolve in areas like network cloud compute, and we consider the role of hyperscalers, for instance, why is it important that the roadmap builds this vision on an end-of-decade vision and not today's view of communication infrastructure and networks?
Well, thank Mike. I think firstly, I am thrilled to be with all of you at this moment, and being at the forefront of our beginning of the 6G journey is quite interesting because we are contributing to the development and the realization of its roadmap and vision. So to a question, I think it's interesting because, well, we cannot build our roadmap on today's view because today's view will be history. So I think what we need to make sure is that we have a reach, a vision guiding us toward the network we want. And along the way, unlocking future capabilities user can barely even imagine. No doubt, the network, and I'm talking here about the fusion of the wireless, wireline, and cloud, as well as the applications, will continue to evolve over the next decade in a multidimensional way. But to build the next G, we must be forward thinking. And to make our forward thinking ideas a reality, we need to use, and for VMware, this is very important, a cyclic and iterative approach. We must assess the technology evolution and trends with an holistic view and with a human in the center of it. The technologies at all levels will evolve. Sometimes they will be in parallel. In other, maybe they'll be complementary to each other, or even in some cases, they will be in conflict with each other. But one thing is for sure, is that they will be influenced by the societal evolution and needs. And this is the reason why we need the feedback loop. So bottom line, we need a long-term view to define our roadmap that does not rely on what we know today. Back to you, Mike.
That's a great observation, Benoit. So let me shift gears just once again. And Brian, I'd like to ask a question that has more, I think, a standard and market relationship. So you have a great deal of experience in global standards development. And obviously AT&T will be one of the operators that will be building out 6G networks, as we heard this morning in the keynote. So the question is it possible for North America to be both a leader in 6G products and networks and services, but also a strong global partner with like-minded regions and countries from a more of an overall global perspective? So we know each region is advancing their own vision of 6G. How do we make this a win-win globally?
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and thanks for the introduction. And I'm excited, as my co-chairs are, to be here in this event where we kick off the roadmap as we move toward the next G. Well, let me start off saying it's not only possible for North America to be both a leader and global partner, but also it's essential that we be both. Our networks, whether it be 4G, 5G, or the future 6G, are global in nature, and this is to allow for interoperability and roaming. We need to work with other regions of the world to make sure we can operate in that global market perspective. Now, that said, in order to be a leader in the global marketplace, we need more North American companies and visionaries to participate in this process. North America needs to develop and advance our own vision for what 6G may be and how it may support the North American marketplace first, and then align with views in the global standards arena with the visions from other regions of the world. Strong North American participation in the standards process through 3GPP is the key to make this a win-win for the global market. Back to you.
All right, Brian, thanks for your global regional explanation. So I'd like to now turn to Michaela. You're kind of a unique position because you're both the chair of the policy committee, but you're also vice chair of the Green G working group. So you've got kind of the policy and the technical perspective. So let me pose this question. So given that the empowerment of people and organizations will be critical to their future needs of society, how do you see the role of government and the private sector in collaboration to help drive a successful 6G marketplace that empowers that society? So it would seem like in this context, the government can be both a key contributor and a key stakeholder as well.
Thank you, Mike, and appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the Next G Alliance. I would like to start off with saying that, empowering society is very important to Microsoft. In fact, Microsoft's vision and mission is to empower everyone on this planet to realize their full potential. So this is a very important question. 6G can play a fundamental role for society, and the government is indeed a key stakeholder in seeing new technologies being adopted and deployed. Next G Alliance is playing the role of bringing both public and private sector to the table to do what is best for society, economy, and its future. And in fact, I would like to say that we have created a special membership for government sector, for the government sector, to have a venue to share their thoughts and interests. And we welcome their input, as you mentioned, as a key contributor. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mikhail. I think listening to your comments and listening to Benoit's comments, I think we can see the strong societal implications of what we're trying to develop from a visionary standpoint. So let me try to change this up a bit. And I think for this round of questions, I would just ask that you kind of put on your Next G Alliance leadership hat and just think in terms of how the Alliance can help kind of drive its own evolution and growth into the future, which in turn will help to drive leadership of this region. So Devaki, let me come back to you from a standards landscape perspective. If global standards are seen to be a real core goal of 6G. So how can the Next G Alliance help to get more North American regional needs and priorities, which essentially equates to leadership, into this international ecosystem, this very complex ecosystem of 6G standards development?
Thank you, Mike. Indeed, striving for global standards is essential for economy of scale, to keep cost under control for connectivity, and also essential for global roaming, as Brian already mentioned. These factors have really been the key for success of cellular technology, starting from 2G to 5G. From Next G Alliance perspective, we should also consider global collaboration. Global collaboration is essential to strengthen North American leadership and also to promote global standards for 6G. And this will also allow North American technology needs and interests to be influenced even before global standardization work starts. And eventually, Next G Alliance members and North American companies must play a key role in influencing 6G standards work in 3GPP. And this is essential to show global technology leadership from North America perspective.
All right, Devaki, thank you. So, Benoit, this is kind of a complex question, but a very important question. So, could you talk about about how establishing a strategy for North America is so important? Why do we need to lay out a collective strategy for this region, and how do we do that?
Well, I agree with you, Mike. These are important and complex questions, but for the success of the Next G Alliance, it's important to address that properly. First and foremost, we need to craft an effective collaborative strategy between the private and the public sectors that will serve as an actionable way to align everyone to get this region to the finish line and set up North America as a global leader in 6G. So our NGA game plan is to master the 6G innovation ecosystem on its entire innovation life cycle. We want to execute flawlessly and have an edge in almost every aspect of it. And it's important to encourage a robust and diverse innovation 6G ecosystem. It's pivotal. While creating a strong synergy and alignment between the industry, academia, and governments, like Michaela and Vaki were mentioning, that's going to be very important. And we will go beyond the traditional model by thinking about a collective strategy for North America that ties together all of the various stages of the NGA life cycle. We will focus to prioritize the right set of research topics, propose new approaches that make research learning translate into things like jobs of the future, educational needs, and policy goals as examples. Then we will incentivize industry to bring the results of the research to the market faster and creating the right environment to accelerate the development of emerging solutions that meet societal needs. And that's important, with the laser focus to fast track deployment and ignite rapid adoption to these sustainable 6G technologies and novel application by the society. As a key takeaway, it is crucial that we are acting as one North America.
Thank you, Benoit. That was very helpful in terms of understanding how strategy and vision and leadership all tie together. So Brian, I think this would be a good question from operator's perspective. So the Next G Alliance has defined itself as basically 6G research and realization. And so that means that today's research must translate into tomorrow's market readiness and market realization. can you give us some examples why it is so important to the future of 6G to look across its entire life cycle?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's a very, very important question. And now, as we know, research to realization really is the key. Research is going to help us define what can be someday, while realization defines how that someday translates to today. While pure research is essential to identify the breakthroughs, from an operator and customer perspective, taking that research to the market through realization into products and services, or applying research to increase operational efficiencies for running networks, is a key role of the NextG Alliance. The NextG Alliance will help identify the research that will ultimately translate into standards, which will define what 6G may offer.
All right, Brian. So I think that's I think you're making one of the key points of the organization. I think what differentiates the NextG Alliance from some of the other global initiatives, and that's really the taking us all the way from research to market realization and everything in between, and how that ultimately leads to leadership. So thank you for that response. And I'm going to turn now to Michaela. So you chair the NextG Alliance Policy Committee, and that group is composed of various policy experts and government affairs experts and so on that work across the industry. So how can these experts work with North American governments, US and Canadian governments, to help the industry really achieve leadership in 6G? How do the kind of the private and public sector collaborate?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, this is a very important question because we are expecting the collaboration to be very fruitful. And there are many ways, it's a two-way street. So there are many ways to help each other. But we are expecting, to push for help and to get help from the government on things like funding fundamental research, which we talked about quite a bit on this panel. Providing opportunities for proof of concepts, for instance, incentivize private and public sector to invest in deployments, and maybe going all the way, as Devaki was saying, to international cooperation with like-minded countries and organizations. I want to say that the year ahead, really, we will focus on creating the relationship between us and the public sector. And specifically, we would like to establish relationships with all the relevant agencies to make sure that we get their input, as well as all the relevant international organization to gather all this input and make sure that we are all in sync and work towards the same vision.
All right, Michaela, thank you. So I think what you're basically talking about is where the NextG Alliance is going next, right, in terms of government stakeholdering and reaching out to research communities. So in the remaining time we have left, I wonder if we could do kind of a lightning round question and just give me kind of your more immediate responses question. As you think about where the NextG Alliance is going and you think about the future, can you identify one thing that the NextG Alliance could do to ensure North American leadership? One key thing, and I'll go back to Devaki and start with Devaki.
Thank you, Mike. From NextG Alliance perspective, as Michaela mentioned, besides working with the funding agencies and promoting them to incentivize the research work, we can also facilitate collaboration between academia and industry by encouraging more academia presence within NextG Alliance, also by conducting joint workshops on various technology areas. Then we have the potential to really come up with a game changer for 6G era.
Thank you. Benoit, anything?
Well, I think that throughout this discussion, one word that comes is really collaboration, and make sure that we do this in a way that brings different views, different way of thinking. And this is going to be important. And having governments from North America collaborating together. So industry collaborating together, I think we learn over the years to do that efficiently. Governments, in between governments, and trying to position a common vision, common view, and acting, as helping, like we were discussing today, is going to be very key for the success of North America. And if you have resonated to what you have learned today, today, and if you want to be pioneer of this 6G journey, we are inviting you to join the Next G Alliance, because that's what we need, passionate people to deliver on the mission.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. As Devaki and Benoit mentioned, collaboration is a key, and that close collaboration between academia and industry, it's very important, but we also need collaboration with governments, as Benoit mentioned. Public-private partnerships and policies that support innovation, including incentives to drive research and standards and more participation by industry, is critical for North American leadership. And just to echo Benoit, come join us, participate in this journey, and help us drive that North American leadership. Thank you.
All right, Michaela, any final comment? You get the final comment.
Thank you, but Brian is always stealing my thunder. But I would like to add just that we would like to see harmonization of standards, and we will work with common policies for US, but also with, as I mentioned before, like-minded countries. I would like to reinforce the idea that funding is absolutely necessary for research, fundamental research. And lastly, but very importantly, skilling. It's a very important issue that we need to address, given that we are looking 10 years from now.
All right, so let me finish by saying thank you for joining this panel. Thank you to the panelists for offering your insights. As all of our panelists said, please join us. We can only accomplish this together. And let me now transition to Next G Alliance's Vice Chair of the full member group, Jan Soderstrom from Ericsson, for closing remarks. Thank you.